She opened her eyes, and the first thing she saw was a blinding white light. The beeping of machines cut through the air, high-pitched and unyielding. Gwen Brown's head pounded as she blinked hard, forcing herself to concentrate. Her throat was parched, her body weak, and a dull, searing ache jabbed through her side with each breath. For an instant, she couldn't recall where she was, or why. Her vision slowly sharpened, revealing white hospital walls, tangled tubes, and nurses rushing back and forth. Panic surged through her chest. Where am I?" she whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. One of the nurses leaned over her gently, adjusting the monitor beside her bed. "You're in the hospital, Gwen," she said softly. "You collapsed at home. Just try to stay calm. You're safe." But Gwen didn't feel safe. She felt trapped. Her heart started pounding, and she attempted to sit up. But the excruciating pain came back and pushed her back into the pillow. "No, no, what's going on with me?" she wailed, her voice shaking. She felt a warm, comforting hand envelop hers at that moment. Through her misty eyesight, she saw Kody Brown, her mother, sitting next to the bed, crying. Christine's complexion was pale, her eyes bloodshot from crying. "Sweetheart, you're all right," Christine whispered softly, stroking Gwen's hair back. "You're safe now. I'm here." Gwen's lip began to shake. "Mom, what happened to me?" Christine paused, visibly searching for the right words. Her voice broke as she replied. You fainted. They brought you here in an ambulance. The doctors have been doing tests to determine why." Gwen gulped, her thoughts reeling. She didn't remember falling. She remembered being at home, feeling slightly lightheaded, and then nothing. While the machines kept on beeping around them, one of the doctors walked into the room, holding a clipboard. He looked somber, his brow furrowed with worry. Christine was on her feet at once, holding Gwen's hand tight. "Doctor, please, tell us what's going on," she begged. The physician drew a breath, and then he spoke, his words cautious and controlled. "Gwen," he began softly, "we did a complete battery of tests to determine what caused you to pass out. Physically you're stable now, but there's something you should be told." Gwen looked at him, her stomach twisting in dread. "What? What is it?" she whispered. The doctor glanced between Gwen and Christine, then said the words that would shatter their world. "Gwen, you're pregnant." For a moment, there was absolute silence. The only sound was the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Christine's mouth fell open in shock, her hands instinctively tightening around Gwen's. Gwen's eyes widened in disbelief as the words sank in. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "No, that's impossible." She started shaking her head vehemently, her tears streaming down her face. I haven't been with anyone," she cried. "That isn't true. It can't be." Christine was paralyzed, torn between shock and bewilderment. "Doctor, there has to be some sort of error," she exclaimed. "This is incorrect. My daughter, she wouldn't lie about this." The doctor's voice was still controlled but firm. "I know this is hard to believe, but the tests are correct. Gwen is several weeks pregnant. This was not a false positive." Gwen held her head, crying. "No, no, no, I don't get it. How can this be happening to me?" Christine put her arms around her daughter, tears falling down her own face. She rocked her gently, whispering, "It's okay, baby. We'll get through this. I promise. We'll get through this." But just as Gwen was being soothed by Christine, the hospital room door swung open with a loud bang. Everyone gasped as they watched Kody Brown, Gwen's father, come storming into the room with a face of raw anger. "What the devil is going on here?" Kody bellowed, his voice ringing out in the tiny room. "Why wasn't I informed first? Why am I finding this out from a nurse, rather than my own relatives?" Christine jumped up at once, standing protectively between Kody and Gwen. "Kody, please, quiet down," she spat. "She's just waking up. She's scared out of her wits." But Kody didn't hear her. His glance leapt from Christine to the doctor, then to Gwen, his face reddening by the second. "You?" he barked at Christine. "You always do this to me. You take my children away from me, and now you do this. What are you hiding?" Gwen's body trembled as she wept harder, hiding her face in her hands. "Dad?" Please, stop screaming, she pleaded. I don't even know what is occurring. But Kody did not listen. Moving closer, Christine stood firm, standing in his way. You must leave immediately, if you can't manage yourself, she said hotly. She doesn't need your rage. She needs calm. The tension in the room was unbearable. The doctor tried to intervene, raising his hands. Mr. Brown, please, he said firmly. Your daughter is in a fragile state. Stress will only make things worse. But Kody wasn't calming down. He turned his fury on the doctor next. You're probably the one filling her head with lies. My daughter isn't pregnant. This is ridiculous. Run the tests again. The doctor stiffened, clearly offended. The tests were done several times. There is no mistake, he said in a cold tone. Christine's voice cracked as she attempted to appeal to him. Kody, for goodness sake, just listen. Gwen needs us now. This isn't about you, or me, or Robin, or anyone else. Our daughter is afraid and confused, and we need to concentrate on her. But Kody's pride would not allow him to relinquish. He sneered at Christine with a malicious glare. Don't you lecture me on family, he snarled. You've been alienating my children from me for years. And now you're covering something up. I can tell. Christine's tears receded to anger. Covering something up, she snapped. Kody, our daughter just discovered she's pregnant and doesn't even know how. She's petrified. And instead of trying to calm her down, you're making this all about you. Gwen cried helplessly, the gravity of the moment bearing down on her. Her whole body trembled as she whispered, Mom, Dad, stop, I just want to go home. Christine faced Gwen, her heart shattering. I know, sweetheart, I know. But we can't leave now. The doctors need to keep you safe. Kody, still seething, shook his finger at Christine. If you try to keep me out of this, you'll regret it, he snarled. I will get to the bottom of this myself. With that, he strode out of the room, slamming the door so hard that Gwen winced sharply. Christine sprang immediately back to her daughter, embracing her. It's okay, she comforted. I won't let him hurt you. We'll find out, Gwen. I promise you, we'll find out the truth. But Christine knew in her heart that something was horribly, horribly wrong. The look in Gwen's eyes was not just that of fear over the pregnancy. It was of a much darker nature. And Christine vowed, there and then, that she would find out the truth, no matter how shocking it would be. Those first days following Gwen's alarming hospital secret were a haze of tears, confusion, and unanswered questions. Christine hadn't left Gwen's bedside for a second. She sat in an uncomfortable hospital chair, grasping her daughter's hand while Gwen slept fitfully. Kody, meanwhile, had been stalking the hospital corridors, pacing back and forth, refusing to be spoken to by Christine, except to demand accusations. He wouldn't say so, but everybody could tell. He was hiding something. The decision to test on the third day, a doctor came to Christine and addressed her in a low, stern voice. Mrs. Brown, due to the situation and Gwen's disorientation, we must have a paternity test conducted. It's necessary, not only for legal purposes, but also for Gwen's health and well-being. Christine's gut nodded. A paternity test, she repeated, shocked. Are you saying you think that someone she knows could be involved? The doctor paused, visibly uneasy. At this stage, we can't exclude anything. Gwen's insistence that she hasn't had sex with anyone has to be considered. The test will tell us what actually went on. Christine's hands were shaking as she nodded. Do it, she replied resolutely. We want the truth. When Christine informed Gwen, her daughter's response was naked fear. Mom? No? Gwen sobbed, frantically shaking her head. I don't want to know. I just want this to go away. Christine wrapped her in a tight hug, swaying back and forth with her like a little girl. I know you're afraid, sweetheart, she whispered softly, her voice cracking. But this isn't only about today. It's about keeping you safe, and ensuring whoever did this never hurts you or anyone else again. At last, through tears, Gwen consented. Kody's rage. When Kody heard about the test, he lost it. He charged into the room, his face burning with anger. Are you serious, Christine? A DNA test? This is embarrassing for our family. You're making this a sideshow. Christine stood up, standing between Kody and Gwen, This has nothing to do with you, Kody, she snapped back. This has to do with Gwen, and discovering the truth of what happened to her. Kody sneered, folding his arms. Oh, come on. The truth? You only want to place the blame on me, because you've resented me since I picked Robin over you. Christine's eyes flashed with anger. You actually think I care about that at the moment, she screamed. My daughter is hospitalized, traumatized, and all you can think of is yourself. Gwen whimpered quietly, covering her ears. Please make the fighting stop, she pleaded. Please? But Kody wouldn't let up. Fine, he snarled. Take your dumb test. But when it's negative and you realize how mistaken you are, I expect a public apology. Christine's voice turned icy. If it's negative, we'll handle it. But if it's not, she bit out the words, her jaw clenched. Then you'd better be prepared for the repercussions. Waiting for the results. The following days were the longest of Christine's existence. Each hour was an eternity, as she sat with Gwen trying to absorb everything. Gwen hardly talked, hardly ate. She just looked at the wall, her hands gripping her blanket. Christine attempted to reassure her, but secretly she was falling apart. What if the test came back with her worst possible fears? What if there was someone from their family who had actually betrayed Gwen? In the meantime, Kody kept Gwen at arm's length, keeping mostly company with Robin in hushed tones. Christine couldn't help but notice how white and nervous Robin appeared. She wasn't frightened, she was concealing something. Late one evening, Christine caught Robin whispering, Kody, if this gets out, we'll be ruined. We have to put a stop to it. Christine stood there, frozen in terror, her blood chilled. Those words echoed over and over again in her mind. Something was horribly wrong. The gathering at last came the day of the results. The hospital conference room was tiny and clinical, but the tension within was claustrophobic. Christine sat next to Gwen, clutching her hand tightly. Janelle and Mary were present as well, tense and anxious looking. Opposite them sat Kody and Robin. Robin's hands shook as she twirled a tissue in her lap, and Kody sat rigidly, scowling at everyone. The doctor came in with a sealed envelope in hand. His expression was serious, his pace slow. Christine's heart thumped so hard she could hardly listen, as he said his words. The results of the paternity test are in. Before I tell you, I must ask you all to keep your cool, regardless of the outcome. Kody snorted. Just tell her already. I know this is going to be something Christine will be disproven of. The physician opened the envelope slowly, taking a single sheet of paper from it. He read it quietly, his face becoming more troubled by the second. At last he looked up, his voice weighed down with the burden of the truth. The bombshell. The test reveals that the father's DNA is a match to someone in Gwen's immediate family. The room descended into pandemonium. Christine gasped so violently that it seemed the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Janelle's hands went to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Mary whispered, "Oh my God," repeatedly. Robin emitted a harsh shriek, grasping her chest as though she had been stabbed. "No, no, that can't be true," she cried, sinking into her chair. But it was Kody's response that ran chills down Christine's backbone. He didn't say anything. He didn't budge. He just sat there, paralyzed, white and shaking. Christine gazed at him, her mind reeling. Why wasn't he telling her she was crazy? Why wasn't he screaming like he always did? "Kody," Christine said slowly, her voice trembling. "What do you know?" Kody snapped, pounding his fist on the table so hard the paper jumped. "This test is incorrect," he bellowed. "It's an error. It must be." The doctor shook his head strongly. "We did the test 3 times. The results are clear. There is no mistake." Gwen's breathing was ragged gasps as she gripped Christine's arm. "Mom," she cried. "What does it mean? Who would do this to me?" Christine wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her tight as she struggled not to cry. "I don't know, baby," she whispered. "But we're going to see. I promise you." Accusations fly. Kody jumped up, his chair squeaking across the floor. "You're all just out to ruin me," he bellowed, wagging a shaking finger at Christine. "You've gotten my kids against me, and now you're planting evidence to make me out to be a monster." Christine stood up, her tone blazing. "Planting evidence," she spat. "Kody, our daughter was raped. This is not about you. It's about saving Gwen." Robin cried uncontrollably by his side. "Kody, please," she begged. "We can't allow this to come out. If people know, it's over." All we've worked for, done. Christine's eyes narrowed. Meaning if people find out what? She asked urgently. Robin, what do you know? Robin turned white. She opened her mouth to answer, but Kody caught her arm and dragged her back. Enough, Kody barked. No one is hiding anything. This is just Christine's way of getting revenge on me for choosing Robin. Christine was trembling with rage now. You think this is revenge? My daughter is broken and terrified, and you're standing here worried about your reputation. The judge's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. This matter is no longer private, he declared. Given the circumstances, this case will move to court. The aftermath. The room was silent in stunned silence. The decision was made. The truth would be revealed before a judge and before the whole world. As all of them left the room, Christine got down beside Gwen. We're going to fight this, darling, she promised. No matter how difficult it is, we will fight. And we will win. Gwen held on to her mother, crying and whispering. I just want to feel safe again. Christine's heart ached, but her voice was firm and fierce. You will, she vowed. I won't let anyone hurt you again. Huddled together in the hallway, Kody and Robin whispered frantically. Robin's words were so low they could hardly be heard, but Christine heard just enough to send her blood chilled. Kody, Robin whispered furiously. If they discover what we've done, we're done. The courthouse was crowded. Reporters, camera teams and observers crowded every available space in the room, humming with excitement. News vans blocked the street, their satellite dishes aimed at the heavens, prepared to transmit updates nationwide. Headlines blared. Brown family implodes. Court battle over daughter's shocking pregnancy. Sister wives scandal rocks TLC star Kody Brown. Inside, the mood was charged and charged, like a time bomb waiting to go off. The battle lines are drawn. Christine walked into the courtroom, holding Gwen's hand. Gwen wore a simple sweater and jeans, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen from nights of endless tears. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor, avoiding the sea of flashing cameras. Christine whispered softly, "Stay close to me, baby. I've got you." On the other side of the aisle, Kody and Robin entered together. Kody's jaw was clenched, his face a combination of anger and defiance. Robin held onto his arm for support, her makeup smudged from tears. Behind them, Janelle and Mary were sitting silently, both clearly shaken. Despite their issues with Christine, they were here for Gwen. The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harris." The courtroom grew quiet, as the judge, a serious woman with intense eyes, sat down. "You may be seated," she instructed sternly, her eyes scanning the courtroom. "This case is one of the most sensitive and disturbing I've had the displeasure of having in my career. I demand complete order. Any disruption and you will be taken away." All were seated, the seriousness of her words sinking in. Opening statements. Christine's attorney, David Carter, stood up first. He was unflappable but emphatic, his voice ringing out over the room. "Your Honor, today we will offer proof that Gwen Brown, a young woman who had her entire life in front of her, was taken advantage of and abused by those she should have been able to trust most, her very own family." A murmur of gasps swept through the crowd. David went on, "We will prove that Gwen was used unknowingly in an outrageous, sinister plot to have another child in the world. A scheme orchestrated by the very person of Kody Brown and wife, Robin Brown." Robin covered her face, shaking her head vehemently as tears flowed down her cheeks. Kody glared at David like he wished to rip him limb from limb. "We will demonstrate," David declared, pounding his hand on the table, "that Gwen was drugged, misled, and robbed of her fundamental human rights." And when the truth started to emerge, the Browns tried to hush it up, silence Gwen and save their reputation. He looked at Gwen, his voice softer. "This courageous young woman is entitled to justice. And today, we start the battle to obtain it for her." The crowd whispered, visibly disturbed. Then Kody's lawyer, a sharp-jawed man named Marcus Hale, stood up to address the court. "Your Honor, this whole case is founded on nothing but hearsay and malice," Marcus snarled. "Christine Brown has been waging war with my client since their breakup. This is just a concerted smear to ruin Kody and Robin's reputation." He pointed theatrically at Gwen. "While we feel great sympathy for Gwen, we feel she has been induced to believe falsehoods. Falsehoods that were planted by Christine for her own selfish purposes." Marcus smiled, quite satisfied with himself. "When the truth is revealed, it will be evident that this whole case is a heartless creation." Christine's fists were clenched, and she could hardly control her fury. Gwen takes the stand. Gwen herself was the first witness. The bailiff administered the oath, and Gwen sat nervously in the witness chair, a tissue clutched between her hands. David approached her softly, speaking in a soothing, reassuring voice. Gwen, tell the court what you recall happening on the day you fainted. Gwen's voice shook. I don't know much, she confessed, tears brimming in her eyes. I was home. I was dizzy like my head wasn't mine. And then it was dark. David nodded solemnly. And when you woke up, where were you? In the hospital, Gwen whispered. My mom was there. The doctors, they said I was pregnant. The courtroom stopped breathing. Did you have any idea prior to that moment that you were pregnant? David asked. No, Gwen exploded, shaking her head wildly. I've never been with anybody. I didn't know how it could happen. Christine cried silently in the crowd, her hands to her face. David's tone was soothing but authoritative. Gwen, can you explain to the court how that affected you? Gwen completely lost it, her sentences between tears. I felt violated, scared, like my body wasn't my own. I just wanted to go away. Several people in the audience cried. Even the judge looked a little less stern. David allowed Gwen time to regain her composure before posing his last question. Gwen, what do you want to result from this case? She raised her tear-stained face, her voice little more than a whisper. I just want the truth, and for it to never happen to anyone else. Kody's cross-examination. Marcus Hale, Kody's lawyer, stood up with a smug smile. He walked towards Gwen like a predator stalking its prey. Gwen, he said smoothly, you say you've never been with anyone. But can't it possibly, you just don't remember? Christine leapt from her chair. Objection, badgering the witness. The judge slammed her gavel. Sustained. Mr. Hale, tone down. Marcus raised his hands in innocence. Sorry, Your Honor. Gwen, let me try again. You were stressed, weren't you? Stress can lead to memory loss. Gwen's hands shook as she clutched her tissue. I know what I remember, she said tightly, her voice trembling but firm. And I know what I don't. Marcus sneered. Or what you think you remember. Thanks to your mother spinning tales in your head. Christine jumped up for the second time. How dare you? She bellowed. My daughter is not lying. The judge banged her gavel. Mrs. Brown, sit down at once or I will have you ejected. Christine sat, trembling with rage, while Gwen dissolved into sobs. Marcus backed away, satisfied he'd rattled her. Christine's testimony. Next, Christine took the stand. Her lawyer guided her through her testimony, her voice steady but full of raw emotion. I've watched my daughter suffer, Christine said, tears glistening in her eyes. She's been terrified, confused, and deeply hurt. And Kody's done nothing but belittle us, deny us, and attempt to cover all this up. She reached her finger directly at Kody, and her voice grew loud. He's manipulated and ruled this family for years with manipulation and fear. And now my worst fear has come true. One of my children was hurt because of it. Kody punched the table. Lies, he shouted. All lies. You're attempting to destroy me, because you couldn't handle me loving Robin more than you. The courtroom erupted into yells, until the judge slammed down her gavel. Order! Order! Christine glared Kody into silence, her voice glacial. This has nothing to do with love, Kody. This has to do with Gwen, and what you've done to her. Robin cracks under pressure. At last Robin was summoned to the stand to testify. She trembled visibly as she sat down, holding a tissue in a fist so tight it almost ripped. David's questions were direct, piercing her shields. Mrs. Brown, had you and your husband ever talked about having another baby? Yes, Robin acknowledged, speaking barely above a whisper. But we couldn't. There were complications. David's eyes narrowed. And yet a pregnancy took place, one Gwen was totally unaware of. Can you tell me that? Robin's breathing came in rapid gasps. I don't know, she faltered. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The audience gasped in shock. Christine widened her eyes in horror. David leaned in harder. What wasn't supposed to be like this, Robin? Robin crumpled. She dissolved into wails, screaming. Kody said it was the only way. He said Gwen wouldn't remember, that it would be better for everyone. The courtroom was in disarray. Newspaper reporters yelled. Cameras blinked. Christine shrieked with fury. The judge slammed his gavel repeatedly. Order! Order in this court! Kody rushed forward, grabbing Robin's arm. Shut up, he growled. Don't say another thing. But it was too late. The harm was done. Robin's admission hung in the air like smoke after a fire, making everyone dizzy. The turning point. Christine hugged Gwen, holding her as Gwen cried helplessly. It's okay, baby, Christine said vehemently. The truth is coming out. He can't hurt you anymore. On the other side of the room, Kody's face contorted in rage and desperation. For the first time ever, he looked afraid. The judge drew a breath, her voice firm but cutting. Based on this testimony, she stated, this court will proceed with full criminal charges against Kody Brown. The truth will come out, and justice will be served. The courtroom erupted in the sound of talk, as Christine clung to Gwen, whispering, we are going to win this, sweetheart. No matter how difficult it becomes, we will win. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet, as though everyone had collectively ceased breathing. Robin's explosive revelation still lingered in the air, like a just detonated bomb, that created shockwaves reverberating all over the room. Christine hugged Gwen, tightly murmuring reassurances, as Kody remained immobile, his face flushed with anger and fear. His face flushed with anger and fear. The judge's gavel banged over and over. Order! Order! In this court, Judge Harris bellowed, her voice slicing through the pandemonium like a knife. If there are any more outbursts, I will clear this courtroom. Am I understood? Everyone gradually settled, although the tension was palpable. Whispers hummed like irate bees, journalists writing furiously, cameras flashing, viewers straining to hear every aspect of the drama unfolding. Kody loses control. The judge trained her piercing gaze on Kody. Mr. Brown, you will keep silent unless addressed directly. One more disruption, and you will be taken from this room in handcuffs. Kody's jaw was clenched so tightly it seemed it would snap. His chest rose and fell with his breathing, as he glared at Robin, who sat wailing on the witness stand. You've ruined everything, he snarled at her under his breath, but loudly enough for those around him to hear. Christine overheard his remark, and sprang to her feet, her finger pointing at him. Did you all hear that? He just confessed it. He knows what he's done perfectly well. The judge brought up her gavel. Mrs. Brown, sit down. You will have your turn. Christine sat down unwillingly, sobbing down the sides of her face, holding on to Gwen's hand for dear life. The judge's ultimatum. Judge Harris leaned over, her tone glacially controlled. Mrs. Robin Brown, she started, you have just made this court a partial confession. I strongly suggest you be totally truthful from now on, or you will be subject to the full force of the law. Robin's lips quivered. She was a woman caught between fear and guilt. David Carter, Christine's attorney, moved forward slowly, as the hunter stalks its quarry. Robin, he spoke softly, speak for the court what Kody told you. Tell us why you cooperated with his scheme. Robin clutched her tissue, her knuckles white. I didn't want to, she strangled. I said no at first, but Kody kept insisting it was the only way to save our family. Christine's voice cracked, shaking with fury. Save the family? By annihilating mine. The judge struck her gavel. Mrs. Brown, calm yourself. Robin spoke to Christine, crying harder. I thought if we had another child, things would improve. Kody replied Gwen was young and healthy, and wouldn't remember anything if we ensured she didn't know. A gasp swept around the room. Gwen hid her face against her mother's shoulder and shook wildly. The secret plan revealed. David's voice tightened. Robin, tell me precisely what you mean by wouldn't remember. How was Kody going to make Gwen forget? Robin's body convulsed. He gave me pills, she whispered. He told them they would make Gwen calm down, get her to sleep well, so she wouldn't be aware of what was going on. Christine shrieked in anguish, crumpling against Gwen as her face streamed with tears. You beasts, she shouted. You gave my baby a pill. The judge struck her gavel, so loudly the report reverberated like thunder. Bailiffs, one more word out of you and I will have this courtroom emptied out. Christine covered her hands over her mouth, crying in silence. David took a step closer, his voice icy cold. Robin, you are swearing in court that Kody Brown conspired to drug Gwen for using her body against her consent.
Robin nodded hesitantly, each action like a confession pulling her further into hopelessness. Yes, she breathed. He told me it was the only way we could have another child, that Gwen would never discover it, and no one else would ever know. The horrifying evidence. David then motioned to his aide, who rolled in a small cart draped in black cloth. The whole courtroom leaned forward, holding its breath collectively. David dramatically pulled away the cloth, and it showed a padlocked metal box. Your Honor, he stated solemnly, this is evidence found in the Brown residence, by a valid search warrant. Within this box are medical equipment, syringes and tablets. Everything consistent with Robin's testimony. Kody's face had paled to a ghostly white. The bailiff lifted the top on the box and revealed its contents to the courtroom. A few observers gasped, while others had their mouths covered in shock.
David took out a small vial and held it aloft. This drug, he said, was identified by a state lab as a potent sedative, one capable of causing unconsciousness and amnesia. Christine wept silently, cradling Gwen in her arms. David turned to face Robin again. Ira turned to face Robin again. Do you know what this is, Robin? Robin nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, that's what Kody gave me to take. And what did he instruct you to do with them? Put them in Gwen's tea, she breathed. So she would not fight, so she would not suspect. The courtroom exploded. Reporters yelled at each other, cameras fired like lightning, and a couple of people shrieked in horror. Judge Harris pounded her gavel repeatedly. Order! Order! I will clear this courtroom if necessary. Kody's fury unleashed. Kody leapt to his feet, his face twisted with rage. You're lying, Robin, he bellowed. You're attempting to save yourself by throwing me under the bus. Robin's anger turned from grief. No, Kody, I'm telling the truth because I can no longer live with this guilt. You weak, pathetic woman, Kody shouted, slamming his fist on the tabletop. Everything I did was for this family. For our legacy. Christine leapt to her feet, pointing at him with trembling fingers. For your legacy? You ruined your daughter's life, you monster. The judge had finally had enough. Bailiffs, she commanded. Subdue Mr. Brown at once. Two bailiffs jumped to her side, grabbing Kody's arms as he struggled furiously. Take your hands off me, he roared, his voice ringing across the room. This isn't over. I am the patriarch of this family. I get to choose what's done. His words cast a spine-chilling chill over everyone in the room. The bailiffs finally forced him into a chair, shackling his hands to the armrests. Christine's final stand. Christine rose to her feet, standing tall despite the tears streaming down her face. No, Kody, she said fiercely, her voice cutting through the chaos. You don't get to decide anymore. You've controlled us long enough. With fear, with manipulation, with lies. She turned to the judge, her voice breaking but determined. Your Honor, please, safeguard my daughter. She should be able to heal, have a future where she doesn't have this horror. Gwen, shaking and pale, raised her head. Her voice was little more than a whisper, but her words stilled the room. I just want to feel safe again, she breathed. I don't want him close to me. Ever. Christine hugged Gwen, kissing the crown of her head as tears came freely. The judge's ruling. Judge Harris took a deep breath, her expression grim but resolute. Given the testimony and evidence presented, this court finds probable cause to move forward with full criminal charges against Kody Brown, including kidnapping, unlawful drugging, and assault. The courtroom exploded once more, but this time the judge didn't stop them. Kody's face twisted in fury as he screamed, "You'll regret this. All of you." The bailiffs pulled him to his feet and started pulling him away. Robin cried hysterically as she clung to the witness stand, whispering, "I'm sorry, Gwen. I'm so sorry." Christine stood between Gwen and the confusion, whispering hotly, "It's over, baby. He can't harm you again." A glimmer of hope when Kody was taken from the courtroom in handcuffs. Christine clung to Gwen. Janelle and Mary came over, crying openly. For the first time in years, the broken sister wives united, not as competition, but as mothers. Janelle laid a hand on Christine's shoulder. "We'll support you, all of us. Gwen won't face this by herself." Christine nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you both." The judge's last words rang out in the courtroom, leaving no question. These court sessions will not countenance the misuse of power or the wrecking of innocent lives. We will seek justice, regardless of how influential the accused are. The gavel came down for the final time, bringing the day's business to a close. The calm after the storm. In the streets outside the courthouse, the waiting world, there were crowds of journalists thronging the ground, calling out questions and clicking cameras as Christine, Gwen, Janelle, and Mary stepped out together. Christine held Gwen back from the cameras as she delivered a brief statement. Today was about truth, she stated categorically. My daughter should be able to feel safe, to heal, and to live without fear. That's all that concerns me now. Gwen held on to her mother, mute but resolute. For the first time she felt the faintest glimmer of hope, that perhaps, just perhaps, she could start over. As the flash of cameras surrounded them, and the noise of the crowd roared, Christine whispered into Gwen's ear, "We're free now, baby, we're finally free." The day of the verdict had finally arrived. The courthouse was surrounded by reporters, cameras flashing like lightning against the gray morning sky. Crowds of onlookers pressed against the barricades, desperate to catch a glimpse of the Brown family. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Christine sat next to Gwen in the front row, squeezing her daughter's shaking hands. Gwen's face was ashen, her eyes bloodshot from the sleepless nights plagued by nightmares. Each breath she made was labored, like the weight of the world on her shoulders. Janelle and Mary sat together behind them, their bond something they hadn't shared in years. For once there was no bitterness, no rivalries, just sorrow and determination to stand behind Gwen. Sitting at the defense table was Robin, alone. Her neatly styled hair was now matted and disheveled, her makeup caked, her eyes puffy from days of constant weeping. Kody was not there. He was in a safe holding cell, waiting for the court's verdict. When the bailiff's voice boomed out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harris," the courtroom complied immediately. Judge Harris arrived, her face a grim mask of authority. She bore the weight of this case like a heavy cloak. The time had finally arrived. The tension before the storm. Judge Harris sat, and the whole courtroom copied. The air was charged with anticipation. As the jury walked back into the room, every face was inscrutable, each expression carefully controlled. Christine held Gwen's hand so hard that Gwen flinched, but did not remove it. She needed her mother's strength right then more than ever. Robin kept her head down, unobtrusive tears falling onto her lap. Her whimpers were almost inaudible, but the quivering of her shoulders revealed her disturbance. When the foreman of the jury rose, a silence fell over the courtroom. You could almost hear the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above, and the gentle crinkle of paper as reporters poised their writing instruments. Judge Harris cleared her throat, her voice firm but even. "Members of the jury, do you have a unanimous verdict?" The foreman, a silver-haired man with gentle eyes, nodded gravely. "We do, Your Honor." Christine took a deep breath. Gwen's nails pierced her mother's skin. Time was suspended, each tick heavier than the last. "The verdict is read." The foreman opened a piece of paper and started to read, his voice shaking only slightly. "In the case of the state against Kody Brown, for the crime of illegal drugging, we find the defendant guilty." The courtroom exploded into gasps. Christine covered her mouth with a hand, as Gwen's knees gave out under her. She would have hit the floor if her mother hadn't grabbed her. "On the charge of kidnapping and unlawful confinement, we find the defendant guilty." Reporters wrote furiously, pencils scratching like a storm on the horizon. A few onlookers applauded quietly before being suppressed by a glacial stare from the bailiff. The voice of the foreman rose, as he announced the last tally. "On the charge of abuse and assault, we find the defendant guilty." The courtroom burst into pandemonium. Christine sobbed a cry of raw relief, holding on to Gwen for dear life. Janelle and Mary hugged behind them, both women weeping openly. Reporters yelled questions. Cameras strobed like mad lightning. Judge Harris pounded her gavel over and over, bellowing, "Order! Order in this courtroom." When silence finally descended, she looked over at Kody, who had been brought into the room by two bailiffs for reading the verdict. Kody's face was ashen and twisted with fury. His former proud stance was lost, replaced by the slumped, defeated appearance of a man whose empire had fallen. The sentencing Judge Harris spoke firmly and unyielding. "Mr. Kody Brown, You stand convicted of several atrocious crimes against your own daughter. Your conduct constitutes a gross breach of trust, and it has brought immeasurable suffering and trauma. She took a moment to allow her words to impact. For these offenses, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. There was a stunned gasp from the room. Christine collapsed over her seat, sobbing hysterically, as Gwen hugged her mother, shaking like a leaf. Robin cried, dropped to her knees, grabbing the railing of the defense table. "No!" she shouted. "Your Honor, please don't take him from me. He's all I've got." Judge Harris's face didn't yield. "Mrs. Brown, you have pleaded guilty to your participation in these crimes. Though your participation was taken into consideration, you will also have a separate trial to decide your destiny." Robin collapsed totally, her body heaving with tears. Kody's last frenzy. When the bailiffs moved to take Kody away, he unexpectedly wrenched himself free and turned to stare at Christine and Gwen. His eyes blazed with malice and desperation. "You think you've won, Christine?" he snarled. "This isn't over. You've poisoned them against me, but one day they'll realize the truth, and they'll return to me." Christine rose to her feet, her tears dried by anger. She had held silent for years, afraid to incur this man's fury, but no longer. "No, Kody," she said, firmly, her voice steady and unbreakable. "The only thing that is true here is that you will never harm Gwen again. You will never harm any of us again." The bailiffs hauled Kody back, shackles rattling as he struggled against them, screaming incoherently until he was finally pushed out of the room. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him, leaving in stunned silence in his wake. After the storm once, the courtroom finally cleared, Christine, Gwen, Janelle and Mary sat together in a private conference room. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, they could breathe. Gwen sat silently, her eyes fixed on her hands. She still appeared delicate, but there was a faint spark of light in her eyes. A hope. Christine embraced her with an arm. "It's over now, baby," she whispered. "He can't hurt you anymore." Gwen's voice was gentle but distinct. "I know, Mom, but it still feels like he's here. Like the nightmare isn't really over." Christine planted a kiss on her daughter's forehead. "It'll take time, sweetheart, but we'll get through this together." Janelle reached across the table, taking Christine's free hand. "You're not alone," she said firmly. "We're a family, Christine, all of us, and we'll protect Gwen, no matter what." Mary nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "We've made mistakes, but this is our chance to make things right." For the first time, Christine smiled through her tears. The sister wives, separately, came back together again by what they shared for Gwen. The press conference. A multitude of reporters waited outside the courthouse. Christine took her place at the podium, surrounded by Janelle, Mary and Gwen. The cameras blazed with their flash, yet Christine stood tall. She addressed the crowd with a quiet strength. "Today's verdict was about more than justice for Gwen," she started. "It was about freeing ourselves from decades of fear and control." Her voice shook with emotion, but she didn't waver. "My daughter is a survivor. She's courageous, and though this period in our lives has been one of suffering, we will not allow it to shape us." The reporters yelled out questions, but Christine didn't stop. "Our concern now is healing. Gwen deserves a future filled with love, safety and peace, and that is exactly what we're going to give her." She turned to Gwen, who gave a small, determined nod. The crowd erupted into applause as Christine guided her daughter away from the podium, past the flashing cameras and shouting voices. A new beginning back home. The atmosphere was different. The home, which had once been filled with tension and turmoil, now seemed like a haven. Christine made tea as Gwen settled onto the couch, covered in a warm blanket. The sunlight that poured through the windows seemed like a miracle, a guarantee of better times to come. "It feels odd," Gwen confessed quietly, "as if I'm free at last, but also like I don't know who I am without the fear." Christine sat next to her, drawing her into a warm hug. "You get to be whoever you want to be, sweetheart," she whispered. "You get to choose." Gwen smiled weakly, resting her head against her mother's shoulder. Janelle and Mary joined them, bearing snacks and warm smiles. For the first time in years, laughter filled the house once more, soft and tentative, but genuine. The final scene later that night. Gwen stood alone in her room, looking out the window at the starry sky. Her voice was soft, but filled with determination, as she whispered to herself, "He tried to break me, but he didn't win. I'm still here. And I'm stronger than he'll ever be. Christine appeared in the doorway, smiling gently. You ready for bed, honey? Gwen turned, tears shining in her eyes. But this time they were tears of healing, not fear. Yeah, Mom, I'm ready. Christine hugged her tightly, whispering, we made it, baby. The nightmare is over. As the camera fades out, the screen goes black with the words, justice was served. Healing begins now.